Hey guys, welcome back to the Cold Brew. My name is Luke, and today we're going to be going for our first tutorial on Mobx with basic state management. So we're going to try and achieve something simple like we have right in front of you here. To type your name 3 times. But what this tutorial actually hopes to achieve is to give you the basic groundwork for Mobx, as well as give you a good understanding of the ways that you can use Mobx within your code base. Before we start the video, if you end up enjoying it, please leave a like and a subscribe down below. It really helps the channel grow. We aim to release a video every week with everything regarding the software industry and software in general. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, please stay tuned. So we're going to start off here by creating a simple React app. There's nothing special about it. It's just a normal create React app. And then we're going to install Mobx by doing an npm install save to Mobx, and this will give us access to that package. Once that has all been installed, we're going to go to the source of our React app, create a new directory called store. This can be named whatever you like. I just like to call it store. And we're also then going to create a new file, and we're going to call that root.store. This is just a file naming convention that I enjoy. So if you have something else, that's totally fine as well. So now that we've got our store file, we can actually get started with writing the actual code. And the code will look something like this. So starting at the top, we've created a class called root_store. This is just to match our naming convention or the file name. So we're going to start by looking at the constructor of our root_store class, and what is important to understand here is the make auto observable. So this is a Mobx method that basically tells our class that it is an observable class. Everything in it must be observable. Our properties must trigger change, our actions must help trigger change and cause state change to happen. I would highly recommend that you read their documentation to understand more of this about setting up which properties you would like to be observable and what you would not, etc. But in this case, for simplicity, we're going to make our class just auto observable and pass the instance of our root_store to it to allow that to happen. Then going on to the very top there, by our name property, we have assigned it a default value of an empty string, and this is the state that we want to change and update. In order to change and update that, however, we have to create a method. We can't just mutate or rather change that property directly, because Mobx will tell us or warn us in the logs and say you cannot do this. So what we then do is create a method called setName. Can be whatever you want, but then we pass it a name value, a string, and assign it to our property name. So we're going to jump right back into our main application component, and we're going to go import our new store and create a input with a handler, as well as making use of our setName method to trigger change whenever we enter that on the screen. So in this code, other than a simple onChange handler that makes use of our store to set the name so that we don't mutate it directly, we've done something at the very top, and this is called a reaction. This is a Mobx method that we tell we want to watch this property on our store. You can watch the whole store as well. In this case, we're just wanting to watch that one property. And then we are wanting to see what that value is. So in our case, we're just logging it and assigning it to an external name variable, and then we are making use of that variable inside of our app component. Now some of you might expect for my name that I enter here to actually change the value of my React component, but in fact it doesn't. And the reason for this is because it is not actually telling React to re-render that component. It is not reacting off of our state change. In order to do that, we have to create our own custom hook and make use of React context and tell the component that we want it to change. So to do this is actually quite simple. Now if you aren't familiar with React hooks and React context, I would recommend just doing a little bit of a read up. I've made links down below in the description for this. But in short, I am basically creating a custom hook called useRootStore, and this rootStore is going to take a context that I've created from my main store class and return it in a way that I'll then be able to use. And then if there is no context for it to use, it will then throw an error. We will then jump back into our app component and install a brand new package in order to observe this new state, and it's called Mobx React Lite. There is a heavier version. I've just chosen to use the light version in this case. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to use from this new package that we've installed called Observer. This is a higher order function that wraps our application and basically tells it, hey, when there is a Mobx change, I need you to re-render this application, this component rather, and show its new state. With that, we are then able to make use of our root store in our application now. So I'm going to import our use root store and then access our name property on our root store. So now when you enter your name, you should see it update. But you'll notice on the first line that our name is starting to appear there as well, where it previously didn't. And the reason for this is because our external name variable is, even though it's changing under the hood, our app component previously did not re-render. Now that it does, it will then start to show its actual state that we changed it within the reactive method call from Mobx. Another way that we can access this state is via a reactProvider. If you're not familiar with providers, I recommend that you go and read up on their documentation. In short, it's a component that we give it some state or values, and we will be able to access it via its properties. So this is linked to our store context. So as you can see, I have created a root store provider component, and this is making use of our context, which has our state, and then I'm going to export both of those for us to consume later in our application component. Then jumping back into the application component, I'm going to import our root store provider component, and then I'm going to make use of the store context as a consumer, which has all our state, and access the name property that is in our root store, and then print that on the screen. So now when I update my name, you'll see it in 3 places, which is showing all the different ways in which we can use Mobx's state management. It's important to note that you wouldn't use all 3 necessarily in this way. It is just for example. So the key takeaways from this video is that there are 3 different ways that you can access your state within Mobx. Now, the 2 of the examples are very much specific to React, but the first example is for non-React components or just code bases, as well as you can still use it within React. However, you'd use it more inside of little libraries that you write inside, or just general business logic that you want to access that state. You don't use the first method inside of your components. The reason for this is that you'll start to notice performance issues and weird renders. The second is probably the most common pattern you'll use, and that is using our custom hook, the use root store. And this one will allow you just to access the properties and methods directly, and is probably the most straightforward way to use it within your React components and code base. And then the third is if you are more familiar and comfortable with React context and happy to go that way, and you're also happy with using providers and consumers. If you're not, it's something that you can read up and learn about, but this is more for those sort of people that like to use that. As always, thanks for watching this video. If you happen to have any comments or any questions, please leave it down below. I've also linked the GitHub to access this code also in the description. But as always, leave a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.